of Cromwell Lake, and within the 50 feet, disturbance is generally prohibited. And I think the code further goes on to say, you know, regular maintenance of lawns that are existing is acceptable, like mowing, you know, certainly no pesticides or herbicides, I think is prohibited. You know what, I do actually have the, I think I appended them to our memo, so let me tell you what it is for sure. Yeah, so riparian zone, a minimum 50-foot undisturbed riparian zone shall be maintained adjacent to all streams and water bodies in the overlay district. So it then goes on to talk about it's measured from the top of the stream bank, so I wasn't too far off. It also says the following requirements apply. No vegetation may be removed which has not already been cleared prior to the effective date of the provision, except dead and dangerous trees. It shall not apply to the maintenance of existing or approved lawn and planting areas of single-family homes, so that's what I was getting at before. No land disturbance is permitted in any unpaved areas of the riparian zone except for structures like flagpoles, signs, and security lights, which would result in increases in impervious area that are minor. I think that, well, anyways, that's it. Structures such as flagpoles, signs, and security lights. Necessary stream bank or shoreline stabilization. You know, these are things that would be permitted. Development of a water supply well. And then it goes on to what we're talking about is when the planning board has jurisdiction over disturbance in the 50-foot riparian area, there's this test, you know, that we've been discussing, the compelling need and the project benefit versus alternatives, you know, practical alternatives for the site. You know, whether or not the development potential of the lot is removed, because, you know, you've seen some applications where the riparian zone and the buffer encompass the whole lot.
Right.
You know, in this case, there is the rear portion of the lot actually has some area that are not impacted, so.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, because in the original application, I don't think the applicant was looking to move the house, correct?
Right.
So if we were asking him to move it a foot or 2 feet or 3 feet in any direction, isn't that going to impact what you just said?
Yeah, so regardless, the applicant has to demolish the home. I think that's clear, and including the foundation. That's what they got back from the building inspector, that it didn't make sense to reuse the existing foundation because, you know, the amount of disturbance associated with that, restoring it to a usable condition would, you know, make it a moot point. So I think, you know, based on this application, taking the demolition part of it out of it, because that has to happen regardless, if they're going to reconstruct a new home and they can move it outside of the riparian zone, you know, then in the future, you don't have to have this application come before you again because, you know, they're in a conforming area, you know, to be reviewed by the applicant, and they don't have to have that disturbance anymore.
Okay, so it gets back to what Tom said, we should look at if you can move it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's all alternatives.
Yeah. That's my,
Again, it might be in their best interest.
yeah. I just wanted to,
It may or may not allow us to connect to the existing infrastructure, then we might have to tear up more of the site. I know the driveways are configured already, and we probably have to move all that earth and reset that. So we need to look at it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, look at it, you know, see what can be done. Let's explore all possibilities.
So if we end up back where we began tonight, and we're trying to address the needs of the riparian, you know, the water quality issues. We developed a way to demolish the house in place, right into the foundation, to wall it out, just under the New York State, you know, variance for asbestos abatement. It would take care of all the asbestos, all the lead, the shingles, any kind of floor tile material in the house, sheet rock, you know, typical
Right.
construction material. We would have addressed that, and we'd really be looking for the very next step.
Well, if I may, so I think what you've done so far is not moot, because again, the demolition has to occur regardless. So all of those procedures would be implemented, but when you're reconstructing the home, you know, now all of a sudden, you know, in the future, if you have to do repairs or while you're constructing the new home, I mean, that's disturbance that could be avoided if you're outside of those regulated areas.
We look at that house, it's
you're also digging that hole outside of the riparian zone, so technically, if that fill is suitable, it could be used to fill the hole that you've now created. So I think, though, that the plan or the direction here may be that if you can look at those alternatives and see if it's feasible, if you would be able to create a complying plan, you know, for the building and the lot, showing that outside of the zone, then I think that may be an option for, you know, the planning board to discuss with you.
I mean, we'll take a look at it, but, you know, I think that the main thing here is that I think we've demonstrated, I mean, this balancing test we're supposed to undergo is, you know, whether we have a compelling need that outweighs the loss of protection to the water supply. And I think we've demonstrated with the pre-construction, construction, and post-construction plan that there isn't going to be any loss of protection to the waterway. We're not going to engage in any activity. We can control the activity in such a way that there will be no loss of protection to the waterway. Even though we're that close, we can still do it. And if there's something in particular that is a concern that would suggest otherwise, let us know and we'll address it. But I think we've indicated, I think we've come up with a really good plan, and I think that it's certainly feasible. And I believe it's certainly within Mr. Goldstein's, you know, work, the work he's done, that he can certainly, you know, say that it's doable. So if that's the case, I'm starting to hesitate here as to why we would go through the effort of moving the thing.
If you build without building within the recreation zone, I think we should explore all opportunities.
Okay, I don't, listen, I don't have a problem looking at it, but I think one of the factors is going to be, okay, we move it, we're going to have to weigh moving it, the extra work that's going to be created there, is it going to be worth it when we've basically made our case about the waterway? I don't have a problem looking at it. What I would like to do, though, is ask, if this I'm assuming this would be the worst-case scenario, I would still ask the board to consider setting a public hearing now, because
I don't think we're at that stage. I think we need to see if there are alternatives.
Yeah, because it could raise more questions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You guys want to look to see if there are. Well, you'd have to contact the building department, see when you get put up in the next agenda. But our next meeting would be January.
The next meeting is January 4th. The submission date for that is today.
Yeah, we're
So, you're not going to work tonight and get it in?
If you can give a special dispensation,
Especially the January 4th, my birthday, yeah.
But if you submit
submit tomorrow or the next day.
Let's see.
to get on the 4th, I don't think so. But if you submit the 4th, maybe the 18th,
The 18th, right?
yeah.
Okay, all right. Can the board just adjourn this to the 18th?
Well, there's nothing to adjourn. It's not a
Our
public hearing.
appearance?
Well, we don't want to put you on unless we're sure something's coming in.
Okay.
But I would like, if the board could, just to move this a little bit further, is it is a type 2 action? If you could make a motion to recognize that it's a type 2 action.
Make motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Just wanna-
I just got one other question.
Go ahead.
Okay. On the agenda, it says LLC. This has been a year since you've been before us.
Yes.
It says LLC on the agenda, but this is not an LLC, it's an applicant, right?
He may own this in an LLC. I'm not
Well,
actually,
then my question would be,
Yeah, we need the LLC paperwork.
did we get the proper LLC confirmation?
That was the comment, wasn't it?
that's fine. So there's a form, we'll fill out the
Yeah.
form.
Yeah, it's just an
We'll submit the LLC ownership form.
If it is an LLC.
Yeah.
Okay, and if I may ask one more question, is there any, I'm not sure I really saw any, other than what you've set forth in the review letter, is there any particular concerns about the construction plan that You may call into question as to whether,
Entity disclosure form was submitted.
oh, it was? Okay, good.
What's been,
Yeah.
I just had to go back. It was submitted
Okay, thanks.
a long time ago.
I think everything that we had questions on is in our memo, so as long as, they can be addressed, we'll just look
Between
for
now
a
and the
future
next
submission,
We can address them
essentially.
between now and the next submission?
You certainly can,
Okay.
just to kind of go back to this, if it is located outside of the riparian zone and it is complying, you don't come back before this board.
Okay. All right. And then at that point, it's the building inspector who's going to review the buffer zone requirements. Okay, well, we hope to see you on the 18th. Thanks. Have a great holiday.
good holidays.
Thank you.
I mean,
Go ahead. Nice to meet us together.
Oh, okay.
But we're still getting stuff tomorrow. All right, next on the agenda. Newman, ARB review by revised documents submitted for proposed ARB modifications to single-family home to include a pool, enclosure of garage doors and windows and entry door. Said property is located at 19 Hill Avenue in High Hills and is known on the village of Woodbury tax maps as section 219, block 10, lot 5. Who is here, what do we got? Is anybody here for, no one wants?
You sound like
Oh,
my
nice.
phone.
Next on the agenda. Eastgate Management, 152 Seven Springs. Review revised documents submitted for ARB and ridge preservation of proposed single-family dwelling. And remove existing dwelling. Said property is located at 152 Seven Springs Road, in Honolulu, and is known in the village of Woodbury tax maps as section 213, block 1, block 15.12.
Good evening, Pat
How are
Hutton.
you, Pat?
Good, Pat Hutton with MJS Engineering, representing Eastgate Management on the project. I believe we've addressed most of the board's comments. The last meeting, there was a concern about the ridge preservation area and the viewscape from Seven Springs Road on the east side of the property, to which we've added additional screening trees, along, as well as more trees in the front. We, last night, got a waiver for the water. So, and also, let's see, what else? Oh, we are currently before the Orange County DPW for the entrance permit. That's shown on the plan. Basically, they're concerned about the site triangle in front with the entrance, which we had planned to remove the trees that are obstructing the site distance, which will be taken care of during construction. Hopefully, I've met your comments, and
Any questions or comments for the applicant? Natalie?
So I think, this applicant has been before you a number of times. They've, attempted to address the comments from the board and also from, our written memoranda. Just to kind of recap, with respect to this new submission, they did submit cut sheets for the retaining wall, so if that's acceptable to the board, the applicant should list the materials on the ARB form. They're also proposing a green chain link fence for fall protection, or a barrier essentially associated with the retaining wall. If that's to the board's satisfaction, that should be listed on the ARB form. Our memo just notes that they did provide the comparable homes and sizes. So, we've called that to your attention for your consideration of similarity and dissimilarity. The applicant added additional plantings based on your comments from the last meeting. So unless, you take any exceptions to the locations that they're proposed, we do not. And then really the rest of our comments are just recommended conditions for your action and, some minor administrative things, so.
Have a chance to review the materials. Yes. For the retaining wall, which color were you going with on it?
I don't believe they've chosen one yet, but they've submitted, those are the wall that they'd like to use. If you have a preference, I would assume that you, they would accept that preference.
We okay with what was submitted? Unfortunately, I have a little bit more here for those. I guess this is width, they're looking for width.
Yeah, I agree. The earthy tones are more
But that's you.
appropriate.
Already the block.
No, yeah, I'm good.
One of the other three tones? Or one of these two, either
Yeah.
desert, start with the desert, or the west mountain.
Not the white.
Yeah, one of the more three tones.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you have any questions or concerns like this?
Yeah, I'm just reading Natalie's memo here under the ARB, and when you mentioned the square footage of the house, you said it's 202% larger than the largest, and the applicant hasn't provided a footprint comparison. Is there a, within that community, I'll say, is there a, what we're saying is there's no comparison for what he wants to build. That's what you're saying here?
No, so I apologize for the confusion. So the applicant, I think, provided, was it 11, 10 comparable homes for the board to consider? Quite a few.
Yeah.
So what I did there was just showed the range. So it's 2.5% larger than the largest home and a substantially larger than the smallest home. But ultimately, it's within a 2.5%
Okay.
range of another home in the nearby vicinity. And then with respect to the layout of the home, because it's primarily one floor, you know, the gross floor area is within 2.5% of another home, but it's 60% larger than, you know, another home,
Right.
essentially.
Okay, thank you.
So our next step is public hearing.
You waived the public hearing, and I'll
Yeah,
just
okay.
pass it again.
So
So-
we go for,
You can authorize the drafting of a resolution.
wait a minute. I will make a motion to authorize the draft of a resolution.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
One, let me just write this down. One thing that was requested at the September meeting and remains outstanding was the entity disclosure form. So we do need that. The
I'm sorry, the what?
entity disclosure form, it can be found on the building department's website.
Okay.
And it's just that the LLC has to fill it out, sign it.
Sure, no problem.
So it's a pretty simple form, but we want to make sure it's all.
Absolutely, I understand. Yeah.
And then, Pat, if you can just submit that ARB form updated to reflect the retaining wall material and color that you select and the chain link fence, I'd appreciate it.
All right, got it. We're done? Thank you very much for your time.
Great holiday.
And, yeah, you also.
Moving right along. No comments. Review documents in oversight plan for the clearing and grading associated with development of adjacent property in the town of Monroe, said property located on Integer Road and is owned on the village of Woodbury tax map to section 225, lot 1, lot 30.
Good evening.
How are you?
Doing well. My name is Mark Seamers. I'm from Peter, Zach, and Fow, here on behalf of the applicant. I know that some information has been provided to you from the Town of Monroe Planning Board since around mid-2020 on this project. One of which plans showed a large retaining wall that ran along the village-town line at the back of the project. In July 2020, the project received a positive declaration from the Town of Monroe Planning Board, acting as lead agency. And in November of 2020, a scoping document for the DEIS on this project was adopted by the Town of Monroe Planning Board. Since that time, there's been a lot of discussion and work done on the project with the consultants and the Town of Monroe Planning Board in an effort to reduce the layout of the project and the impact of the project to the extent possible while still providing the desired services to the surrounding communities. These revisions were quote-unquote finalized and deemed, and the plan in front of you tonight was deemed the preferred alternate by the Town of Monroe Planning Board in July of this year. To give you a quick rundown of the project consists of one large 4-story building with a gross floor or square footage of the footprint of 86,287 square feet on the first and second floors, and about 76,400 square feet on the third and fourth floors. The bottom 2 floors will contain retail uses. The third floor will be split into offices and a 39-room hotel, and the fourth floor will consist of offices. The bottom 2 floors, there's 2 proposed access driveways that come off of Ninninger Road, as you can see on the map. And there are associated access driveways and parking lots throughout the Town of Monroe parcel. The parking areas on the project are tiered. So the first floor parking areas are provided in front of the building, and parking areas and access to the second floor and third floor are provided behind the building, allowing the building to be built into the hill a little bit and provide the parking and access to those levels. It was discussed in our consultant meetings with the Town of Monroe Planning Board that a graded vegetated slope behind the building and parking areas would be more visually attractive than providing a large concrete retaining wall. All of the proposed improvements as far as the building, stormwater, parking is to be located in the Town of Monroe. The only improvement on the Village of Woodbury parcel would be the clearing and grading to allow for that construction of the parking lots without a retaining wall, which is what brings us in front of your board now. It changes your board's role in SECRA from an interested agency to an involved agency. I believe the Town of Monroe Planning Board circulated that to you in August. We then submitted this plan to you, I believe, in September, and supplemented our application in October. And we're now in front of you to answer any questions about this clearing and grading and discuss the logistics of how this review will take place and moving forward into a site plan approval for this clearing and grading. To give you a quick couple of numbers on the clearing and grading, the parcel in the town of Woodbury, or Village of Woodbury, excuse me, is 12.3 acres in size. The clearing area that we're proposing for this grading is about 2.48 acres, and the excavated area, the excavated volume of the slope is approximately 35,900 cubic yards, all of which will be used as fill on the Town of Monroe parcel to bring the site up and underneath the parking areas. So nothing that is taken off of the village parcel will be trucked on any roads. It will just be brought down, placed, and used as fill. I did receive the comment letter ahead of time, and I did have time to go through that. If you have any questions for me now, I'll answer them, or if you want to go through the letter.
Just for, so since this applicant's first appearance before your board, I think it's always helpful just to kind of say up front, it's when you're responding to our comments, if you could submit a letter sort of going one by one, if it's the details or, just clarification on any items that we've raised, that's helpful to just sort of streamline the review process. But with that being said, Mr. Seamers, okay. Described sort of how this application is brought on by a commercial development within the town. So really what's happening on the village parcel is the grading and clearing that would be required to, essentially construct that lot the way they've proposed. We did have some technical comments and asked for some of the details that Mr. Seamers just provided as far as, the acreage of clearing and the volume of cut required and whether or not there would be, any truck movements from the site to, dispose of the soil associated with the cut. So we appreciate those responses. But with that being said, we did have comments on, the technical things, so I'll just go through them really quickly. We did ask for an existing conditions plan. One of the things I should have mentioned also is while this is before you for site plan approval for the clearing and grading, this project is also impacted by your ridge preservation section because it's above elevation 600. And it also is impacted by the water quality protection overlay because there is a small tributary that runs from the north actually through on the corner of this property through the town property and then actually comes back into the village. So what it loses, it sort of loses some protection on the town property, if you will.
Is the building itself going to be part of our ridge preservation, or just?
No, I think you're strictly reviewing what's happening on the village lot, and Kelly weigh in on that. But why it does is it is impactful for the ridge preservation criteria is, well, number one, does it make things more visible from your view corridor? Which we've opined that because the WP3 subdivision is located just east of this site, and that subdivision was approved with, I think, a 200-foot buffer along the western edge, the clearing that would occur on this site may not really be visible because of the vegetation that's preserved as part of that approval. However, the ridge preservation criteria also discusses, any opportunities to, limit the amount of clearing that's required, as well as limit removal of trees that are greater than 8 inches diameter. So, I think that what we've recommended is that you consider with the applicant any options to, trim that back as much as possible. All right, so that was one thing. And then with respect to, okay, so we did ask for the existing conditions plan, and I think that that is important to just show, again, that drainage way that comes from the north to the south through this property as well as the town property. And how this lot being developed on the town really kind of bisects that entirely, but also to understand exactly how much of the water quality protection overlay, regulations impact this development. So we've asked for that plan. We asked for some details on the grading operations, including slope stabilization techniques and cross sections. We've asked for the clearing limits to be shown on the plan and quantified, which, again, it's already been said here tonight. But if that proceeds and this application proceeds before the planning board, we'll recommend a condition of your action that those clearing limits be staked in the field prior to any disturbance. With respect to stormwater and erosion and sediment control, a SWIP is going to be required for the overall development, and clearly, the applicant has advanced their seeker process, so that's already prepared probably. The village should receive a copy of that for our review and consideration.
Can I just?
Yeah.
One thing that I did skip over is that the DEIS is currently being prepared. We're bringing all of that information together.
Okay.
The SWIP is in progress.
Sure.
It should be completed in the next couple of weeks here. So we're looking to submit all of that stuff back in near the end of January.
Okay. So we'll look forward to receiving that. Honestly, I think, again, the applicant has our memorandum. If the board has any questions on those specific comments, I think we've kind of touched on, the review topics for the board, why they apply to this application and sort of what some of the concerns that, we have, which, we'll assume will be addressed in the applicant's next submission.
Let's say, it sounds like we're waiting on a lot of submissions.
Yeah, it's their first appearance, so that's typically how it goes.
One question I do have is on the visual, I don't know if it's an actual visual analysis, but it's along the 32 corridor. Are there certain points along it that we need to look?
It should be the point that is would make this application most visible, essentially. So the planning board usually considers, the closest proximity, essentially, to the development. Really, what I think in this application, it would be, around the school and almost where the interchange is, just because you see sort of straight through on 17, to this site. But again, we've sort of opined that the buffer that the subdivision affords, WP3,
Shows a lot of protection.
right.
Thank you.
Does
Yep.
the board have any comments or questions at this point?
There's one question. So, I know you're gonna answer this later on, but how far back on the plan does the clearing go up the slope approximately? Onto the village's side?
At its deepest point, I actually don't have a plan that's to scale. At its deepest point by the 760 contour, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm looking at let's see. Yeah, just around anywhere from like the 690 to 760 area. Like directly behind.
Yeah, it's approximately 180 feet.
180 feet, okay. So that's like that. All right, that's it. Yeah. That's it.
Natalie? You have anything else? Kelly?
I don't have anything right now. I do,
Actions we need to take right now, or?
no action you need to take. This was referred to the county. They did already respond for the village's part, which was a local determination. Obviously, they're still waiting for the DEIS and seeker for the applicant. It's obviously not ready for a public hearing, but we'll await the submission of the DEIS. Not too soon. It's the
So-
holidays.
So we submit the DEIS, it gets forwarded to you, you review it, and then we come back to schedule a public hearing?
Well, we
that
wouldn't
how-
be able to take any action until the finding statement is adopted, so you would probably want to wait until the finding statement is adopted to come back, unless you've got changes that are a result of, the seeker process. So I don't know that we would necessarily see you back, but if there are comments that they do have on the DEIS would be listed on an agenda and a report would be prepared. So they might want to see you here for the review of that when they have that on the agenda. But I don't
Okay.
think that they would be setting a public hearing until the finding statement was adopted.
Okay, but it would be a good idea for us to just stay in touch with you to
Yes,
to
I
make
think
sure we're
so.
moving forward and everyone is,
Yeah, and if something
Happy with
comes
it.
up, yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of things happen when you're going through the EIS process. Things change, stuff comes up.
Mhm.
It's a good idea to stay in touch, further develop the plans, and, don't let it be stagnant, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
very good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, we'll see you after you,
Very good. Thank you. You too.
Have a good night.
on that note, if you have no further business, I will make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nobody came.
Everybody have a good night.